The first sound is the wind. It does not howl. It does not scream. It moves like a slow hand over the earth, brushing against the roofs, bending the trees, slipping into the cracks of doors and shutters where the heat tries to hide. Snow falls. Through the silence, each flake steady and sure, filling the spaces of the world. It lays itself on timber-bird roofs, on the sagging thatch, on the thin paths that wing between the cottages. It falls on the crosses in the graveyard until the names are gone. And still it falls in this white silence. Hunger breathes. It lives behind the walls. It sleeps under blankets where ribs show like the slats of an empty barrel. It wakes with the sun and lingers even in the dark. It presses close, whispering. At the far edge of the village, a figure moves against the wind. A woman, her cloak a dull scrap of wool, stiff with ice. She leans forward as she walks, for the bundle of sticks on her back pulls her down, and the drifts drag at her boots. Her hair has frozen where the breath of her mouth rose and settled. Behind her walks a boy, no taller than her hip, silent as her shadow. His hands are bare. The fingers are red, split open at the tips. But he does not complain. They cross from the shelter of the woods where the wolves have been roaming. The tracks are still fresh, a scatter of paws pressing into the soft snow. Once, in the gray of the morning, she saw them, a pair of yellow eyes far off between the pines. The wolves are hungry too. The village ahead crouches close to itself like a body trying to keep warm. The roofs bow under the weight of snow. The windows are small, sealed with wax and cloth. From crooked chimneys a thin smoke rises, weak as thread, carrying with it the smell of peat and thin broth. Inside those walls there is little left. The barley is gone. The lard scraped away until the bottom of the pot shows. The salted fish was stretched so far it became water in the mouth. Winter came early this year, and it came hard. It has not loosened its grip. Some whisper that the bells in the church ring hollow now because no one listens anymore, not even heaven. Others say this is simply how the world works. The earth grows cold, and those who can endure will endure. The rest will be buried under snow. The woman opens a door that is frozen. The boy follows her into a room no bigger than the space between two trees. The walls lean inward, the roof sags. But here at least the wind cannot reach them. She drops the sticks and hits a spark. The candle catches first, a small light. But it stays. Then she feeds the small fire with the wood, slow, careful, as though she is building a fragile hope. The flames catch. They make a thin glow, gold against the gray. The boy sits on the floor and holds his hands. The heat is faint, but it draws the pain out of his fingers for a little while. He looks at the flame, watching the way it bends and bows when the wind sighs against the walls. The woman stands behind him, pulling the wet snow from her hair, shaking it from her cloak. Outside, the wind does not rest. The snow falls heavier now, filling in the tracks they left. The forest waits at the edge of the village, silent, watching. There are no words between them, no stories to tell. But in the boy's chest is a question. It presses against his ribs the way hunger does. How long can a small light hold back such a deep winter? How long can warmth be borrowed before the cold decides to take its due? The candle flickers as if it knows the answer. Yet it does not go out. And so the night grows longer. The snow climbs against the door. And in the darkness beyond the glow, there are eyes watching, waiting for what comes next. The river lies silent, bound in ice, a pale scar cut through the valley. Its surface is no longer water, no longer alive, but a sheet of dull glass that swallows the light and gives nothing back. Each step upon its banks groans under the weight of winter. Here, men kneel with axes, their bodies bent like old trees. Under snow, they strike at the ice, blow after blow, until it gives way with a sound like bone breaking. Their breaths rise around them, faint plumes, like the last smoke of a dying hearth. And when the hole opens, they scoop the dark water with cupped hands, knowing it will freeze again before the next hour comes out around them. Life moves slowly. Beneath a torn awning stitched from sailcloth, a girl sits with a blade in her lap. Her cheeks are raw from the wind, lips split where the cold is bitten, yet her hands do not stop. The knife kisses the whetstone, slow, steady, each stroke as measured as a prayer. Along the riverbank, others work in silence. Men and women with faces like carved wood, men torn nets with thread so thin it snaps in the frost. Some scrape the stiff hides of animals long dead, coaxing whatever can still be made useful. Their voices when they speak are quiet, as if even sound must be saved, as if breath itself has become a kind of wealth. The old mill stands nearby, its wheel caught solid by ice. Once it turned without rest, grinding grain that smelled of the harvest. Now it leans, dead and heavy, while sacks of grain inside have grown hard as stone. The river that gave life now holds it hostage. Beyond, the fields lie empty. The snow swallows everything, the roads, the fences, the furrows of earth that once promised food. And in that emptiness, a crow moves, black against the white. It hops over the crusted snow, one slow step, then another, leaving sharp marks that the wind soon erases. The girl raises her head to watch it, and for a moment, she wonders if the bird feels the cold, or if hunger has made it something else. Something that no longer notices pain. The hours shorten as they do in the heart of winter. The sun, pale as a sick coin, sinks early. Its light spills across the river like thin blood, turning the ice to the color of a faded wound. The world, for that moment, seems to hold its breath. One by one, the villagers rise. They gather what little they have shaped with their hands, nets patched for another day, bundles of sticks, pieces of leather that might yet be turned into shoes. No one speaks. They turn from the river and make their way back toward the cluster of low roofs where chimneys cough out smoke so faint it almost fades before it leaves the stone. The sound of their steps on the frozen ground is soft, swallowed by the snow. The girl holds the knife now sharpened and slips it into the fold of cloth at her side. It is not a weapon, not yet. It is a tool like everything here. But she has learned in these months that tools, like people, change when they are pressed too long, too hard. She follows the slow trail of the others, her small figure swallowed by the long shadow of the mill. The cold bites her, but she does not look back at the river. Instead, she keeps her eyes on the faint light that still burns in the village, for she has learned something else, too. Deep cold is not just in the air. It is in the waiting, in the stillness that tests the heart, in the silence that watches to see who will stand when all others fall. And tonight, as the snow gathers deep at her feet, she wonders which of them the winter will remember, and which it will erase. The knife rests against her side, hidden, and the last light dies. The valley sinks into the long, slow dark. Far above, a raven cuts across the sky, alone. Somewhere in the shadowed hills, a bell will ring again soon, and its sound will travel over the frozen river, over the fields, and call them toward a night they do not yet see. A low, thin cry breaks the dark. Not the cry of a beast, but of the wind, clawing against old timbers. It slips through every gap and nail hole, rattling the hall like a thing alive. Inside, the air is thick with the weight of breath and smoke. The great hearth burns, but the flame is small, a stubborn ember in a vast night. Its light dances on the blackened beams, but it does not reach far enough to drive away the cold. On the hard wooden floor, bodies huddle together, wrapped in cloaks and thin blankets, waiting. Reeve has opened his hall, for the cottages have grown too brittle to hold back the storm. Snow piles against doors and presses down on sagging thatch. And so they have come here, the last refuge in a winter that has no mercy. A woman in the corner rocks a baby whose lips are blue. The child does not cry. Her arms cradle it close, rocking, rocking, as if the motion might call back the heat that has already begun to leave. Two boys sit cross-legged, their knees showing through patches of rough wool. Between them is a bowl of gruel, thin as water. They eat with their fingers, taking turns as if it were a game, though their faces hold no laughter. The fire pops, and for a moment the sound is loud enough to draw all eyes. Someone stirs the pot, adding nothing to it, but the hope that it might. Last Dot the Reeve himself stands at the door. He keeps watch not as a guard, but as one who cannot stop looking at the storm. Through a crack in the boards he sees only white, white and black, snow and the shadows of trees thrashing like madmen in the gale. He does not know if dawn will come, or what it will bring when it does. The wind finds a seam in the roof, and moans through it. It sounds like hunger, like grief. Children press their heads into their mother's arms at that sound, and even the old men, whose lives have been winters upon winters, look toward the door with the same stillness as hunted animals. At the far end of the hall, a man reaches into his coat and draws out a whistle. It is small, carved from ash wood, polished by many hands. He lifts it to his lips and blows. The note is thin, trembling, but it threads its way through the hall. Like a ghost, it carries the shape of something forgotten: green fields, a river's song, the taste of bread warm from a summer oven. For a moment, the room listens. The whistle lowers, and the silence that follows is sharper for it. The man does not speak. He puts the whistle back inside his coat and closes his eyes. The hall breathes as one, slow and heavy. The smell of boiled turnips clings to the air, and beneath it, the sharper smell of wet wool, of unwashed bodies, of straw trampled underfoot. It is the smell of people holding on. Above them, the storm rages. Snow sweeps past the gaps in the walls, hissing like sand. The door shudders against its hinges. Somewhere outside, a branch snaps with the sound of a bone breaking. The fire burns low. Shadows stretch long and deep, climbing the walls like black water. Faces glow faintly in the light, but behind each glow is a greater dark, the kind of dark that waits and watches, patient as winter itself. The Reeve closes the crack in the boards and turns back to them. There are no words. There is nothing to promise. There is only the hall, the storm, the slow ticking of their breath as though each one were a coin paid for another hour of life. Outside, the wind wails again. Inside, they sit and wait. And somewhere, in the hush of that waiting, in the deepest part of the night, the thought settles on every heart. How thin a wall stands between them and the long, cold silence that is waiting to come in. The whistle's note lingers in memory, faint as the warmth of spring. The hall holds it close as the storm prowls outside and the winter listens. It listens and it does not move. The bell that once called men to prayer is silent. On the hill, the monastery stands frozen, as if the winter has carved it from the same stone it rests upon. The ropes that hang from the bell tower are stiff with ice. They no longer bend to the pull of a hand. Frost coats the bronze, and when the wind comes, it strikes the bell like a ghost, a hollow sound that dies before it begins. Inside, the cloister has grown so still that every step is a sound too loud. The monks move in slow shapes, their woolen habits damp with the mist that clings to the stone. Sandals wrapped in rags scrape against frozen flagstones, leaving behind no warmth, only marks of passage. Breath curls from their lips like threads of smoke, weaving into the air, fading before it reaches the high beams of the ceiling. The garden has disappeared. Where mint and thyme once spread in narrow rows, snow lies in uneven drifts pressed up against the cold walls. The fountain at the center stands locked in ice, a perfect, still sculpture of a world that no longer moves. In the scriptorium, there's no sound except the slow scratching of quills. The room is colder than the sky outside, the windows rimed white. Ink grows sluggish in the pots. and if left too long uncovered, it hardens into black glass. But the brothers keep writing. Word by word, they carve meaning into the stillness, as though the act of setting down a line might keep the dark from swallowing the memory of light. Their fingers are red, their knuckles cracked, but still they copy and copy, as if their quiet work might be a wall against the ruin that winter brings out in the kitchens. Broth simmers in great iron pots. The smell is thin, watery, but it is a smell that means life. A lay brother cuts at the last rounds of hard cheese. The knife squeals as it saws through the rind, and the sound fills the kitchen like a cry, then fades to nothing as the blade stills dot at night. The monastery gathers. In the chapel, it is a long hall of stone and shadow. Candles stand like pale soldiers, their flames trembling with every breath of wind that creeps through the cracks. The monks raise their voices, slow and low. The chant rises, but only a little, like a thin rope thrown across a river that has frozen solid. Their voices are the only thing moving freely here. One young novice stands at the back. His hood is pulled forward, but his eyes drift to the narrow slit of a window. Through it, he sees the valley, stretched, white as bone. No tracks mark the snow. No smoke rises from cottages below. He presses his hand against the glass. Frost blooms against his skin, leaving behind the shape of his 5 fingers. A small, ghostly sign that he was here, alive in this moment of great stillness. Outside, the wind sweeps along the hill, clawing at the walls. It tries to press in through the cracks, but the stone holds. For now, the monastery is an island adrift in an endless white. Its walls hold silence the way a jar holds water. And in that silence, these men wait. They wait with their books, their chants, their slow, careful work, not knowing how long the deep cold will keep its hold. Still the chant goes on. It lifts like a thread, fragile, stubborn, refusing to break, even as the wind presses against the walls, even as the night deepens dot and far below. At the edge of the valley where the snow has swallowed every road, a single figure begins the climb, drawn by the faint hum of voices, a sound of life in a world where almost everything else has fallen silent. The forest has gone still. Snow weighs the branches, bending them like old backs. Every hollow is stuffed with white. The world here has been smothered in silence. No sparrow moves in the birches. No squirrel dares scratch in the bark. Only the faint sound of 2 breaths, shaping small ghosts in the frozen air. A boy and his father move between the trees. They walk close, the boy's mittened hand brushing against the sled rope, the father holding it firm. The sled is no more than a few planks bound with rough rope, and it groans as it slides over the crust of the snow. On it lies nothing yet, only the hope that something, anything, might be brought home. The boy carries a stick, the end sharpened with a knife. Its point trembles when the wind pushes past, though his hand tries to make it still. It is the only weapon he has. His father has a bow, but no arrows. The woods have eaten them all, and returned nothing. Around them the trunks rise, pale in the winter light, straight and endless, like the columns of a forgotten hall. Somewhere far away the wind moans. Now and then a branch gives up its burden, and snow drops from a height, falling with a sudden crash that sounds like breaking glass. They have walked since before dawn, feet numb in stiff boots, bellies hollow. Once these woods were alive, full of birdsong, full of the patter of hooves and the scent of foxes. But hunger has taken even the animals. Now the land feels emptied. The father halts. He lifts one hand. The boy stops, his breath snagging in his throat. Through the faint mist of their breath, a shape moves. At first, it was just a shadow between trees. Then it steps out onto the open snow, a deer. Thin, its ribs rising like the bars of a broken cage. Its coat, once rich, now rough with hunger. It stands with its head low, but its eyes are bright, bright in the way of things that must fight to live. Hunger has found hunger, The boy feels his heart thud so hard it hurts. His hands sting with cold as he lifts the sharpened stick. For a moment, he forgets everything. The weight of snow, the ache in his feet, the empty room back home. All he knows is the beating in his chest. The deer looks at them. It does not move. The world holds its breath. A drop of snow slips from a high branch, lands soft on the sled. The boy tightens his grip. His father watches, still a stone dot then. In an instant, the deer bounds. Snow bursts upward like smoke. Its hooves drum the crusted earth. And it is gone, a blur between the trunks, vanishing as if it had never been. The boy lowers the stick. The weight of the moment collapses, and with it, something inside him gives way. His eyes burn, not from the wind, not from the cold. From the ache of coming so close to saving something and losing it in a breath. His father's hand settles on his shoulder. The grip is firm, wordless. There is nothing to say. Together, they turn back. The sled is still empty. The runners whisper against the snow as they pull it. A thin, tired sound. Behind them, the forest closes. Their tracks wind back between the trees, two lines stretching toward the low roofs of the village, where smoke rises in a thin, fragile thread. A banner of survival in a land that has forgotten mercy. And above, in the silence, a crow circles. Once, its shadow sliding across the snow before it drifts away, leaving only the endless white and the cold that waits. The boy looks once over his shoulder, toward the place where the deer had stood. The snow is already smoothing it over, as if nothing had happened. He turns his face forward, and they walk on, back to the hunger that waits for them, and the night that is already coming. The wind comes first, hissing over the frozen road like a whisper that does not end. Snow whirls in it, not falling but driven sideways, grains of ice that sting the skin like sand. Shapes move within that white storm, slow, stubborn shapes, bowed low, as if the sky itself has grown heavy-dotted ox snorts, steam curling from its nostrils, and the rope tied to its neck jerks taut. Its hide is crusted with frost, its legs sunk deep in the drift, yet it pulls, step by step, the wooden cart that follows. Behind it, the wheels moan as if in pain, their rims frozen solid, biting into the ruts of a road that has become as hard as stone dot. At the front walks an old man. His cloak is torn at the hem, and the wind claws through the holes, as if trying to strip him bare. In one hand he grips a crooked staff, in the other the rope. Every step he takes shakes through his thin frame, but he does not stop. Stopping would be a kind of death. Behind him, the others keep close to the cart's shadow. A woman clutches a bundle wrapped in wool, a small shape, still and silent. Only once does it move, a faint twitch, and her arms draw it close, her lips against the cloth. Her words are swallowed by the storm, and yet she speaks them, as if the act of saying them is what keeps the little one alive. Further back come two boys, heads bent, faces red with cold, one holding the other's sleeve. So they do not lose each other in the white. A man pushes at the side of the cart when the wheels stick, and now and then he looks at the sky, not for sun, but for a break in the wind. There is none on both sides of the road. Cottages lie empty, their doors open like broken mouths. Snow heaps against the walls, blocking half the way in, and from the chimneys no smoke has risen for months. Inside, there's only the black of dead hearths, cold beds, the trace of lives that have already fled or fallen. The travelers do not look inside. They have seen enough empty places. The road climbs barely through fields where the wind has torn. All signs of life from the earth. The sky is low, pressed against the land. It is hard to know where one ends and the other begins. The bell begins then, soft, faint, far away. It rings once, then again, carried through the snow by the same wind. That tries to smother it. The sound wavers like a candle in the storm. but it is a sound that means people, walls, a roof. And so their feet move toward it. The baby stirs again, and the woman's eyes close as she presses her face into the cloth. Her breath is warm, but it does not last. The old man glances back only once. In his eyes there is something fierce. Not anger, not hope, only the last thin thread that keeps a man standing when all else has been taken. The bell fades for a moment. The wind howls louder, as if trying to wipe away even that small promise. And then it comes back. They walk toward it, through the white. Time loses shape. There is no morning, no evening, only the colorless light of winter. The road narrows, hemmed by hedges buried to their tops, by trees bent and stripped. The oxen stumble but keep their weight forward, dragging the cart one aching length at a time. The wheels creak like old bones. The ropes bite into the man's hands until the skin cracks, but still he will not let go. What they carry is everything that is left of them. A sleeping child, a sack of grain no bigger than a fist, a few blankets, a kettle with its bottom patched. 3 times and the will to keep going. Snow cakes their boots. Their breaths are harsh, slow. No one speaks. There is nothing to say that has not been said 100 times already. The bell rings again, and this time it is closer. The sound bends around the wind, a hollow bronze voice calling from somewhere they cannot yet see. It is not a promise of warmth, only walls. But even walls, in a winter like this, are enough. At the edge of a rise, the old man pauses. Before him, faint through the curtain of snow, the dark line of a church roof takes shape. Its steeple leans, its windows are blind. But it is there. And behind it, a few houses huddled close, their chimneys giving off the weakest threads of smoke. The oxen snort and keep walking. The cart follows, leaving 2 deep tracks behind it that the wind will soon erase. Step after step, the little group moves down the last stretch of the frozen road. The sound of the bell fades, for it does not need to call them any longer. They have found it, but in this white world, even the sight of shelter does not loosen the cold grip. They walk as if the winter is watching, waiting for one moment of weakness to take them. And still, they move. For beyond that church, beyond those thin walls, is another night waiting. And another road after that. The baby shifts once more. The woman whispers again, and the wind swallows her words. The cart groans. The oxen breathe, and the snow falls on the road they have walked, on the homes they will enter, on the world that keeps no memory of their passing, and far behind them, their tracks fill slowly, as if they had never been there at all. Tomorrow, the road will ask them again. The first sound is the hollow thud of wood against ice. It echoes in the stone court like a drumbeat, steady and slow, striking into the pale morning. A boy stands bent over the frozen mouth of the manor's well, a wooden mallet in both hands. Each swing sends splinters of white breaking loose shards that catch the light before they fall. His breath comes in quick bursts, turning to smoke around his face. There is no water now, only a hard pillar of ice that will have to be broken piece by piece, carried inside, and melted before it can be drunk. All around the courtyard, winter presses against the walls. The wind slides over the tiled roofs and moans along the gaps in the timber. The flag that once showed the Lord's colors hangs heavy, its edges frozen stiff, unable even to stir. There are no hoofbeats, no wheels on the stones, no sound of hounds, only the mallet and the wind. Inside, the manor creaks like a ship caught in a storm. The doors swell in their frames. Frost flowers bloom across every glass window, thick and strange, like a white garden that grows where no sun can touch. Tapestries that once softened the room now hang cold and stiff, their threads holding no warmth. Their scenes of harvest and hunting made cool by what lies outside. The hearths are kept burning from dawn to dawn, but even so, the cold moves in. Like a thief, it clings to the corners, seeps into the beds, finds the bones of those who serve and those who rule. Every step on the rush-strewn floor sounds brittle. Every breath taken feels as if it has been borrowed. Servants hurry along the passageways with their arms full. Buckets filled with ice, split logs, bundles of straw. They rub their hands together until the skin is raw, then wrap them in cloth and keep working. In the kitchen, a low fire smolders beneath blackened pots, the air thick with smoke that stings. The eyes, what was once a place of smells and noise, is now only a thin promise of heat dot in the great hall. The Lord sits at his table, cloaked in fur. Before him lies bread baked 3 days ago, hard enough to break, a few slices of salted meat, and a jar of honey from last summer's bees. He lifts each bite to his mouth with slow care, and still the cold turns his breath to mist. The room that once held banquets and music now swallows the sound of his knife against the board. Even the hounds that lie near the fire do not stir. He eats, but his eyes are elsewhere, on the long windows where the frost crawls, on the doors that lead to fields lying silent, and beyond them, to an orchard stripped to bone. The land that fed this hall is buried now, every furrow under a sheet of white. The stable boy enters quietly, cheeks flushed from the cold, arms full of jagged pieces of ice. He carries them to the kitchen and sets them near the fire, where they will melt slowly, drop by drop, into buckets. The boy stands for a moment with his hands stretched to the faint heat. His nails are blue. Then he turns and goes back into the wind. For a while, no one speaks. Even here, behind these walls, the winter has made everything equal. The same air that numbs the hands of the boy in the stable moves in through the stones and clings to the Lord in his furs. The same hunger creeps into every room, silent and patient. Another gust comes against the shutters. It rattles them in their frames, a sudden roar that makes the hall pause as though listening. The wind moves through the cracks and across the fire, bending the flame so that the shadows of everyone in the room grow long, stretching up the walls like thin black branches. It sounds almost like a voice, deep and low, carrying no words, only a promise that it has not finished. The Lord looks toward the window. Beyond the glass is just white. The servants lower their heads and move again. And outside, in the court, the boy raises his mallet, and the slow sound begins once more, beating against the frozen heart of the well. Night will come soon, and the wind will rise again. But for now, there is still work to be done. There must always be work, while the cold waits at the door. And far beyond the manor walls, in the villages and woods and open roads, others are fighting the same battle. All of them caught beneath the same sky, the same winter, the same unbroken silence that seems to stretch without end. The gust comes again, heavier, and the shutters groan. Inside, every face turns, just for a moment, to listen. And the sound carries with it the weight of something unseen, something that is coming. It moves from the hills toward the manor like a shadow, long before the snow has stopped. The first sound is the whine of wind against stone. It slides around the chapel walls like a living thing, low and restless, as if it is searching for a way in. Snow drives across the hill, hiding every track, blinding every path, and there, almost buried, beneath its weight, the chapel crouches. Its wooden door swells in its hinges, its roof bends beneath the drift. Through the frost-clouded glass, a faint, trembling light flickers, small as a lantern in a graveyard. Inside, the air holds the smell of cold stone and old smoke. The benches are rough, their edges worn by years of hands, knees, and grief. The walls are dark with damp where the snow has pressed through. And at the front, at the foot of the crucifix, a man kneels. The priest's shoulders bow low, his hands spread against the altar, the skin split open across his knuckles. His breath leaves him in pale clouds, rising into the dim rafters like the incense of another season. Behind him, a handful of villagers sit close together, cloaks drawn to their chins. They are silent. No hymns rise, no voices rise. The only sound is the slow hum of the wind circling the stones, the hiss of it finding every crack. Their faces are thin, and their eyes do not meet each other. They look instead to the wood of the cross, as if that dark shape might be the last thing that has not been taken. In the shadowed corner, a little girl turns a string of rosary beads in her fingers. The beads belong to her grandmother. She counts them again and again, but her lips do not move. The cold has stilled even her whisper. Candles in their iron holders spit and flicker. The light is not enough to warm, but it keeps the darkness at arm's length. It paints the faces in thin gold, and in the hollows behind their cheeks the shadows stretch deep. Outside, the snow presses harder against the glass, thickening, swallowing the hill until apparently there is no world left beyond this room. For a moment, no one breathes. Then, out in the white, a sound lifts. A howl long, low, drawn out. It rolls through the drifts, through the stones, into the chapel itself. Every head turns. For a heartbeat, they sit, caught by that voice of hunger that waits just beyond the door. And then, as if remembering where they are, they turn back. The girl clutches her beads tighter. The priest rises slowly, the wood of the altar leaving a faint trace of frost on his palms. He lifts his eyes toward the cross. His voice comes thin at first, raw with cold, and with something heavier than cold. He begins to pray. The words are little more than a whisper, but the others follow, their breath adding to his. The sound grows not strong, but steady. It winds upward, mingling with the smoke of the candles, a thin thread of defiance cast into a winter sky. The prayers fill the chapel. They do not drive away the cold. They do not change the storm. But in that small room, they build a wall against it, a wall made of breath, of hope, of voices that refuse to fall silent. And still the snow climbs higher outside, covering the steps, sealing the path that brought them here. Beyond the door, the hill vanishes, the forest vanishes, the fields, the world, all swallowed in white. It leaves only this small circle of light on the hill, this one room, this one moment of voices rising in the dark. The howl comes again, fainter now, as if the beast has turned and gone deeper into the night. The candles shake in their holders, and the wax runs slow as tears dot inside. The prayers continue. And above them, the crucifix stands silent, carved wood against the pale glow. Outside, the wind begins its patient work again. By dawn, the door may be hidden. By dusk, the hill itself may be gone beneath the drift. But still, within the walls, the sound will rise, soft and stubborn, a last song against the snow. And far below, beyond the hill and the white fields, another bell waits to be heard. Its faint toll will lead us onward. For this night is not the end. Something else waits beyond the wind. The night begins with a sound. A slow sigh of wind, sliding through the cracks of a small cottage, touching the faces of those who lie within. Beyond the thin walls, the dark has swallowed the forest, the paths, the fields. Only the roof of this wattle and daub house stands. Against it, a low hump beneath the endless white sky. Inside, the fire is no more than a breathing coal, a faint glow trembling on the dirt floor. Smoke hangs from the rafters, heavy as sleep. A pot hangs above the embers, its thin broth circling slowly with every movement of the mother's hand. The smell is simple: barley, dried herbs, a memory of summer leaves now ground to dust. It is all that is left. The father bends over a worn leather boot. The thread is stiff. The awl bites his thumb as much as it bites the hide, but he keeps working, each stitch a small refusal to give in. His breath fogs the room. Even before the fire, the cold wraps itself around his fingers. The baby stirs. Its cry comes like a reed, thin, almost hollow, and the sound cuts the air. The eldest boy rises, his limbs stiff, and lifts the small bundle into his arms. He rocks, whispering words he half remembers, the tune like something heard in a dream long ago. The child's crying softens, though the sound does not stop completely. The wind presses against the wooden shutter, and the boards groan in their frame. The mother turns her head and pulls the cloak tighter around her shoulders. The fire bends. Sideways, its light flickering over the wall where a single wooden cross hangs. In the far corner leans a bundle of kindling, the last they have. Tomorrow, when the light comes, someone will have to walk out again through the heavy drifts, into the frozen forest where wolves and hunger wait in silence. The thought sits between them, a silent guest they cannot send away. The father finishes his work and sets the boot aside. The mother lifts the pot, ladles out what she can into wooden bowls, thin but warm. The children eat in silence. The broth runs down their throats like a memory of life, like a promise that cannot quite be believed. As the wind sharpens, the fire diminishes. The walls groan. Somewhere outside, a branch cracks and falls. The night tightens its hold. The mother hums softly, a sound that barely rises above the wind. The cross on the wall catches the faint firelight, its shadow stretching long across the room. The baby sleeps again, and the boy does not put it down, as if the warmth of holding could hold off the cold that waits beyond the door. They lie close, a small circle around the fire. The father leans his back against the wall, his eyes on the embers. The mother curls near the hearth, cloak pulled to her chin. The children lie beside her, one small hand reaching for another. Time on such nights does not move, it only waits. Their breathing slows to the rhythm of the embers, each flame a heartbeat. There are no words left to speak. The wind grows stronger, pushing against the door, creeping through every gap. It carries with it the smell of the forest, of snow, of something wild and endless. But inside, there is only the glow, the smell of barley, the sound of slow breath. In this deep cold, the cottage is both a prison and a sanctuary. A thin skin of wood and mud holding back a world that wants to take everything. And as the night settles into its deepest hour, they wait for a shift in the wind, for the gray of morning, for a sound that might mean there is still another day. Somewhere far away, a bell begins to toll, faint and slow, carried on the wind. No one stirs, but their ears catch it. It rings as if it is speaking to them alone, promising that the darkness will not have them yet. The embers pulse, the bell fades, and the night holds them, waiting. At first, it was just sound. A faint drip of water, slow, hesitant, like the ticking of a clock that had long been broken. It falls from the eaves of a roof and lands in the pale crust of snow, cutting a tiny hollow. Another follows, and another, until it is a rhythm, soft but certain, whispering that the deep cold has loosened its grip. The thaw does not come like a banner in the sky. It does not roar. It creeps. It moves unseen through the frozen earth, unbinding the locks of ice one grain at a time. Beneath the fields, hidden under the last gray snow, water begins to stir and run in narrow veins. Along the roofs, beads of melting ice catch the sun, glistening like glass before slipping downward in shining threads. The air itself begins to change. It smells of wet earth, of rot and life interwoven, a scent the winter had buried for months. And the birds return. At first, a single sparrow, light on a branch, as if testing the air to see if it will hold. Then a crow, its wings loud in the quiet. Their calls feel strange after so much silence, as though the earth itself has forgotten how to answer. In the village, the first shutters open. They creak on their rusted hinges, slow, uncertain. From inside the cottages, faces peer out, pale, hollow-eyed, marked by a season of hunger and waiting. For a moment they only look, blinking into the gray light, and then smoke begins to rise. From chimneys that had been thin and weak, now it rises thicker, curling upward into a sky that seems wider. Somewhere, a church bell rings. Its voice is raw, as if the iron had forgotten its song. It wavers, it falters, but it rings. Children stumble out into the streets. They are thinner now, their limbs long like saplings stripped of leaves, but they run. Their feet splash in the thawing mud, the water cold and brown. But they laugh strange, raw laughter that sounds unused, as if they are learning again how to make it. They kick at the melting snow, and beneath it, the earth appears, brown, soft, smelling of something alive, but winter has left its mark. There are doors that do not open, houses where the closes, shutters stay closed. In the barns, emptiness echoes where grain and hay once lay. In the faces that emerge, there are hollows where roundness used to be, a shadow behind the eyes of those who endured. A woman leaves her cottage. The wood of the door feels warmer under her palm than it has for months. She stands still, her breath leaving her in small clouds that fade quickly in the softer air. Her son stands beside her. He is taller than before, though thin, his hands red with the chill. Together, they look down at the path in front of them, where a thin stream of water runs, carrying with it bits of straw, broken twigs, and the dirt that the snow had hidden. She does not smile, neither does he. They only stand, silent, watching. The earth uncover itself. Around them, the village stirs. Doors open one by one. People step into the slush, their boots sinking into the softening ground. They do not cheer. They look, they listen. They breathe as though each breath is the first in a long while. The thaw is not joy, it is released. It is the slow exhale after a breath held too long. It is the slackening of a noose, the lifting of a weight. But the rope, the weight, they remain. Somewhere a raven circles, black against the white remnants on the ground. Its shadow sweeps across the mud, across the feet of those who have come out of the cold. The bell rings again, stronger this time, though still unsure, and the sound carries out across the fields, across the broken fences, across the hollow barns. It carries into the forest, where the snow still clings to the branches. It carries to the manor, to the monastery, to the empty road where carts have sunk deep into the ice. And in its tone there is a question: what comes after this? For though the snow is melting, the hunger is not gone. The cold has lifted its hand, but its memory has settled deep. The woman takes her son's hand, their fingers locking together. They do not look back at the house. They watch the stream, small and muddy, curling its way through the thawing path. It is a thin line, yet it moves forward out in the distance. The fields glimmer with patches of water, shining faintly like broken glass. The thaw has begun, and with it, life waits to see if it dares to begin again. But even as the water runs, in the sky there are clouds, long and low, heavy with something not yet finished. The earth has opened its mouth, but winter may yet have more to say. And so, the village holds its breath once more, listening, waiting, watching the fragile world rebuild itself one drop at a time. From the bell tower, the last echo fades into the gray, and the sound leaves behind a silence filled with both hope and dread, as the world turns its face toward what comes next.